This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network. Parental discretion is advised.
Fantasy football, Goon and Tooch. 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 Fantasy football, Goon. Touchdown.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Goon podcast. I'm your host, Joe Mandel, the Goon. People call me Joey Two Scoops. And joining me, as always, is my co-host and good buddy, John Santucci. And the royalty of fantasy, we got Spaceball in the house. Gentlemen.
Oh, I feel good, guys. I feel good.
He feels real good, gentlemen. And Tooch, how are you?
This week, so, it's next week. When people tune in next week, I face Tooch next week.
Oh, that's right.
Look out.
All right.
But wait, is there something going on, Joe?
Yeah, we got some breaking news, so everyone stand by.
We interrupt this program for breaking Bears Barroom news.
So, gentlemen, just breaking news right now. A letter just came out from Antonio Brown's lawyer responding to a lawsuit that he was named in today for being accused of rape. So I'm going to go ahead and read this entire statement from Heitner Law, and we'll just kind of react to it afterwards. So here we go. Statement regarding Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown learned today that he has been named in a lawsuit filed in a federal court in the Southern District of Florida. Mr. Brown denies each and every allegation in this lawsuit. He will pursue all legal remedies to not only clear his name, but to also protect other professional athletes against false accusations. Mr. Brown was approached by his accuser in 2017, shortly after Mr. Brown signed a contract making him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. At that time, Mr. Brown was asked to invest $1.6 million in the accuser's business project. Mr. Brown was not informed by his accuser that she had just been levied with a $30,000 IRS tax lien, or that $300,000 of the $1.6 million so-called quote-unquote investment was used to purchase property already owned by the accuser and her mother. When Mr. Brown refused to make the $1.6 million investment, the accuser supposedly cut off communications with Mr. Brown. However, in 2018, the accuser resurfaced and offered to travel to Pennsylvania and South Florida to train Mr. Brown for the upcoming season. Thereafter, the accuser engaged Mr. Brown in a consensual personal relationship. Any sexual interaction with Mr. Brown was entirely consensual. The accuser not only traveled to Mr. Brown's residence on multiple occasions, she traveled from Tennessee to Florida and returned at 2 a.m. to Mr. Brown's residence 10 days after the alleged assault. The accuser continued communication with Mr. Brown throughout 2018 and even asked Mr. Brown for tickets to a Steelers football game in the winter of 2018. Mr. Brown's accuser has continually posted photographs of Mr. Brown on her social media in an effort to financially benefit from his celebrity. Mr. Brown, whose hard work and dedication to his craft has allowed him to rise to the top of his profession, refuses to be the victim of what he believes to be a money grab. In May 2018, Mr. Brown's accuser invited herself to join Mr. Brown and his friends, who were patrons at a Miami adult entertainment club. After several hours of partying, Mr. Brown and his friend called it a night. Instead of leaving by herself as she had arrived and returning to her hotel, Mr. Brown's accuser solicited Mr. Brown to join her and return to Mr. Brown's residence, where the two engaged in consensual sex. Again, Mr. Brown denies all of the accuser's allegations. Signed, Darren Heitner, who is Antonio Brown's lawyer. Wow, oh wow, gentlemen.
If I can jump in here, Joe and Tooch, I'm reading off of Pro Football Weekly right now. one of the things that they have is Brown started masturbating behind her and ejaculated on her back. Brown bragged about the incident in a profane text message that are copied in the lawsuit.
Wow. That's very detailed.
I was waiting for the
I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. I don't think he should have been allowed to play. I don't care if he's being accused. The lady sounds like she's nuts. But the NFL, have you noticed Roger Goodell didn't say a word? You couldn't have done a deal like he did that quickly. You just couldn't have.
It's pretty crazy.
And at the end of the day, I'm sure our listeners forget that before he was traded from Pittsburgh to Oakland, Pittsburgh traded him for a better deal to Buffalo, but he turned down going to Buffalo. He wouldn't go.
Yeah, he wouldn't go to Buffalo.
This guy is nuts, and he shouldn't be allowed in the league. And, maybe they're giving him, Belichick instead of putting him in prison. I mean it sincerely. He's going to hate tutelage under under Belichick rather, and he's going to hate. Even if you saw Brady today, I think he was quoted as saying, "Oh yeah, we got a lot to work on."
Yeah.
Because I think even Brady knows if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Did you see a 16-0 team last week?
They sure look pretty darn good.
Cooking on every cylinder. Yeah. And what do you need that problem for? They could have taken Demaryius Thomas, put him there. By the way, to all our fans, he was traded. No.
To the Jets.
Brown is a bad guy. To anybody in our league, I got 3 Patriots that I'm willing to give up. I don't want them on my team.
There you go. I tell you the one Patriot I do want right now, Spaceball, and that's Julian Edelman. I think he's going to be flying free over the middle of the field, and I think he is going to be fantasy gold the rest of the season.
I agree. I still think Gordon will be the downfield threat. The problem is Brown's getting older. No matter what he thinks and can do, he's getting older. And by the way, and I'm sure Tooch has numbers on all of these things I'm going to say. But by the way, the cornerbacks and the safeties are getting faster and faster.
That's
Every
true.
year, the new safety or the new cornerback for Michigan Wolverines isn't slower than the one that he replaced. It's faster, meaning they're going to be able to cover Brown more. And I'm just, Brown isn't, and he's nuts.
He's nuts, but maybe he was faking to be nuts. I don't know. I don't know if it was an act or what. But either way, unless something happens, Antonio Brown's going to be playing for the New England Patriots next week against the Miami Dolphins. And if you have him on your team with that matchup, you got to be licking your chops because I don't know if you guys watch the Dolphins. They look like hot garbage on Sunday.
So watching the Dolphins this past week was the first time I said to myself, you know what, Clemson or Alabama could beat this team. The old argument that the worst NFL team would beat the best college team. You know what? I watched Miami. I watched Alabama. I watched Clemson. No, I think Miami would lose to both of them. I really mean it.
They're bad. They're bad. And, I know last week I said it's between the Dolphins and the Redskins, but by far the Dolphins look like one of the worst teams ever assembled.
Didn't we call
and
it?
Look at who they've traded.
Yeah. They traded Yeah, go ahead, Tooch.
We called it last week. We asked who would be the worst team in the NFL. I said Dolphins. That's looking to be a pretty good pick there.
Did you see a stat today? I know Tooch loves the stats. Did you see the stat, the top 5 quarterback producers for yardage this past week? Do you know 3 of them weren't in the top 20?
Well, you know how it goes. I mean, but I do have to say, guys, if we're talking about Lamar Jackson, I had him ranked at number 5 last week.
Yep. And you were probably the highest one. You were probably the highest one. You had a lot of breakouts last week. It was probably one of the finest weeks of football that I've seen in a long time. I mean, the Saints-Texans game last night.
Oh, my God. It might be the best football game I've ever seen. It was so good.
In recent memory, and it's going to go back. I remember when the three of us first started to talk and get together on the show, and I said to both of you, all the years that I've played, Drew Brees never has gotten recognition.
It's true.
Until the last couple of years when they became a Super Bowl contender.
He's unbelievable. And that last drive, his accuracy and his clock management was just unreal. The guy is just a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
I was listening to NFL radio today, and they had Will Lutz on speaking of the game winner for the Saints last night. And they were talking, and they think that kick, and he agreed. I forgot who the NFL guy was on talking to. He felt, because that kick had distance, he felt that kick would have gone maybe 63, 64 yards.
He had distance on it. That would have gone from a while, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, yeah, I think it would have been 64, 65 for sure. I mean, when people talk about kickers don't mean anything, BS. I mean, that kid, wow. That could be the difference of a Super Bowl, getting in the Super Bowl for them. Football is different than everything else. They only got, I was thinking today, we only got 13 more weeks in our league.
Yeah, I know, right? And I was like, oh, man. And at least in our Bears Barroom League, I'm like, when you lose your first game, you feel so low, but it's such a long season.
Yeah.
You've got so much time to come back. Yeah.
You know what I always say? I always like to win the odd weeks first because because of my negativity naturally in my head, I will always think it takes me 2 weeks to go below 500. Being 1-0, being 2-1, it always takes you 2 weeks to lose 2 games. So I feel better. It was just, I'm telling you, it was just a fun week of football.
It was a beyond fun week. Oh my gosh, Tooch versus Spaceball.
Yep. We're talking about it next weekend. Find out who comes out on top. I was 3-0 this week.
Well, that's why, even though I said I want to trade all 3 of my New England Patriots, I'm not going to trade them this week against Miami.
No,
and
hold on to him.
Brown's not going to be up to snuff. If Brown gets 15 plays, I'll be shocked. Still is Belichick. If he gets 15 plays, especially against that team, he would rather. I don't have a schedule in front of me. I don't know who the Pats play in week 3. But, you don't want to risk him. How many games did he sit out at the end of the season? 1?
Antonio Brown?
Yeah.
Last year,
Antonio Brown hasn't been in a real game in how long?
Jeez.
He didn't play their last game, remember?
Yeah, I don't know how many games he sat out, but it felt like an eternity. But I think it was only 1. I think it was the last.
You might be right.
Yeah, he sat out 1 game, I think, at the end.
I mean, and I'll tell you something. The Colts looked, if we can accolade a losing team, the Colts looked like they're not going to miss a beat. That Mack at running back is the Mack attack. What a good runner he is.
Leads the league in rushing right now, Spaceball.
The Colts offensive line, man. I said anybody running behind that's going to look pretty good. They got a great offensive line.
I mean, it just really did. Prescott looked like a quarterback. I mean, what about Josh Allen in Buffalo? There's a lot of fun back in the NFL this year.
Yeah, Dak Prescott had a monster game, and that offense looking good under Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator. They used the vertical passing game to open up the underneath stuff. Ezekiel Elliott only had to play 50% of the snaps. They were dominant. A good offensive line.
And by the way, let's go on there. What about Andy Dalton? Did the 3 of us destroy him last week?
I know. It's like he was listening to us, Spaceball, and he's like, forget those guys.
Well, let me jump in on that because I want to say Cincinnati's got a new offensive coordinator, Zach Taylor, who's one of Sean McVay's guys.
Yeah,
or a new
and
coach,
by
Zach
the way,
Taylor. Sorry, new coach.
We
Zach
might
Taylor.
as well start on Cincinnati for this week. I think Mixon's going to be out for a couple of weeks, and the people who picked up Giovanni Bernard might have somebody.
Yeah, I'd probably have to pick him up in the barroom league, Spaceball. I've got first pick.
Somebody has him.
Oh, they do?
Somebody has him. Yeah.
Well, then again,
That's
I'm going to pick up.
Talking about.
Yeah, nobody left.
There's not much left in the barroom league, but I'll give you some picks, waiver wire picks at the end of the show later, guys.
Yeah,
no,
there you
I'm
go.
not on at the end of the show. But I will tell you, if I was taking a running back, this week, I would probably look at Rex Burkhead.
Yeah, heavily involved.
He's heavily involved, and he was as involved as James White. And closer in, the power that Burkhead is, and when you look at it, it's hard if you don't have a superstar in the Patriots. It's hard to play a Patriot because you don't know what Belichick's doing week by week.
Right.
You just don't have a clue who's going to be the one. I know carrying Josh Gordon. And can we talk about how he kept his composure doing, what would you call that, Tooch? A whirlybird, the way he scored?
Oh, Josh Gordon? Yeah, he got hit by like 3 guys, and somehow he just shook them off.
The barflies that are listening to us, Google, it's probably on YouTube, Josh Gordon's touchdown. If you were watching it and had him, like I did, you thought he was going to be down at the 5-yard line. I mean, and then he did a whirlybird above 3 defenders. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really impressive. Yeah. Obviously he's got a lot to prove this year. I still like Josh Gordon, even with Antonio Brown.
Oh, Brown. I think Brown will hurt more so. I think we saw it with the Patriots the last couple of years. Brown's inside. That inside game with Brown and Edelman is going to be phenomenal. He don't need a tight end on their team. And didn't they have a lot of plays, the Patriots, this past week, that they didn't have a tight end in there?
Well, yeah. I mean, Ben Watson suspended for the start of the year, and
right.
minor note to that, he has Antonio Brown's number 84. So I'm curious to see what happens there.
Well, he'll be getting a new Rolex or something.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Here, let me give you a Rolex. And why don't you come over to my house and we'll both run naked in my backyard?
My God.
God, I hate that guy. God. You know what I hate about it? I don't think it's fair. Look at I don't want the NFL turning into the
NBA.
The soap opera that the NBA turned into. Yeah. Where, Anthony Davis has 100% right. We could sit here and argue the rights and wrongs about the drafts. Are they illegal? You're telling me where I have to go to work? Tooch is in another part of the world now. And how is it, Tooch? Is it good, by the way?
It's great. I love it here.
Great.
Love it here, yep.
But, I mean, the bottom line here is, I don't want players – it's going to ruin the league if it gets this crazy. We could talk about the NBA. The next one, if you lived in Minneapolis, besides being nuts, Karl Anthony Towns is going to say, "Hey, I don't want to be here anymore. Right. I want to be on the winner." I mean, this is sad. I want you to be on my team. Spaceball's the team, the winner. I got a hard game against Tooch. He scares me, Joe. I got to be honest.
He's a scary guy.
Tooch scares me now that he's somewhere else in another side of the world, Hong Kong or whatever it is. I mean, the bottom line is, I have certain superstitions. So my wife, a couple times during the day, "How you doing?" I don't think I'm going to win. I don't think I'm going to win. Now, you know how many I won by. We were into the second half of Sunday night's game. "How you doing?" because she wanted to turn on Succession, the show on HBO.
Ah,
and
yes.
I said, you could put it on if you. Yeah, great show, by the way. But you could put it on if you want. I don't think I'm going to win. I won by over 50.
Wow.
And it wasn't just because of last night, but that's the way I am. I get myself crazy.
Well, I mean, one of the guys, Spaceball, that we talked about a lot in the offseason is Josh Jacobs. And I have to say, he was really impressive last night against the Denver Broncos' tough run defense.
Okay, this is the problem of it's sort of like exploring your life on the radio. You know Aldo's listening to this fine show.
Oh, he is, for sure.
Aldo, our prime minister, the person who we still have to work to get us to do our show from the Super Bowl in Miami,
Yes.
has Josh Jacobs, and I want him, and I'm teasing Aldo right now with some trade opportunities, and then just tease him. And now I'm never going to get him. Yeah, Aldo never trade Josh Jacobs. And by the way, though, you know, it's interesting since you brought him up, and since I did love him and would love to have him, he really did not have, what was his average running, 2.7 or something like that? It's just that he got 2 goal line chances and scored immediately.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough run defense with the Broncos, and then he did some damage.
Very tough. Very tough.
And for the fact that he got that many yards, yeah.
When you want to talk about defense, how was the Packers' defense real? Guys, you're there. Well, no longer is Tooch there. What's the problem? Did our friend and cohort on this fine network, Mike North, you know, think about who the Bears could have had if they didn't trade up to get Trubisky.
You got Deshaun Watson, you got Patrick Mahomes,
and you got Watson.
Yeah, that's
you got
that's
Deshaun
tough.
Watson, and so at the end of the day, is it Trubisky or does Nagy not know what he's doing?
Well, I think we need a little more time to figure that one out, but
isn't that what, you know, now you get all the arguments about preseason where that's what you get for not playing in preseason. You know, that's NBA talk, guys. You know, you never would hear Dick Butkus, Walter Payton, Gale Sayers say, "You sitting me in preseason? No way."
Yeah, they looked rusty. You could tell they didn't play during the preseason. It was very obvious, and you got to hope they come out fired up.
It's such a big emotional game. It wasn't. Yeah, it's not like they're playing the Buffalo Bills or somebody. They were playing their number one rival.
Yeah, it was a meaningful game that they lost. They lost the same opening game last year. They still made the playoffs, but definitely a different feeling after this game. And they're really going to have to come out fired up against the Broncos next week because we saw the Broncos looking less than capable last night. That O-line for the Broncos is not good. I hope the Bears can make mincemeat out of them because they look like shit.
Well, now that brings me to this before I get off and leave the real part of the show to the two geniuses. You two. Number one, I want to ask you both, the biggest disappointment of the entire week to each of you, I would say, I'm sticking with the Bears. I'm going to say David Montgomery. I thought this guy would be unbelievable. What was the problem there?
They didn't give him the ball enough. I mean, he ran great when they gave him the ball.
Isn't that what's his name used to say, who now is on the Eagles?
Jordan Howard?
Yeah. Isn't that what he used to say?
Yeah, I mean, Tariq Cohen had an all-time high in his snap count. They used Mike Davis more than they should have. And I believe they threw the ball 41 times, which you just, in a game like that, it's not working. I don't know why you're throwing the ball that much.
Yeah, it's
coaching. With a quarterback like that, it's not worth it. You know,
offensive line was terrible.
I can sit back today and knock Trubisky because I knocked him when they drafted him and traded up for him. The guy I have to remind everybody, only played, 12 games in college?
Yeah, 13
like
games.
13.
Yep. He only played 13 games in college. That's why they don't have a one-and-done rule in the NFL. I mean, where did 12 make them? How bad did they get fleeced, Tooch, on the trade? Who did they trade with to trade up?
It was with the 49ers.
It was
The 49ers they traded to move up, and they probably didn't need to move up. And
no,
you also had your pick of Watson, Mahomes, or Trubisky. You could have taken any of them if you stayed at 3. And somebody might have taken Watson or Mahomes, but then you would have had at 3 a choice.
I am going to say one thing. About Mahomes. What Andy Reid and the Chiefs did with him. They had a quality, not superstar quarterback. Let him play one season. Mahomes on the bench learning from the best in the biz as far as I'm concerned, Andy Reid. I don't think Mahomes could have been as good as he was last year. And by the way, guys, I got to say probably as good as I saw him last Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, he looked
good.
He
is the real deal.
But we got to remember, guys, we didn't touch on this yet. Tyreek Hill hurt, needs surgery, or he's not going to have surgery, but he's going to be out for a while. So Sammy Watkins has got to be a must-add in all leagues.
Sammy Watkins does.
I don't know. In the draft, I should have drafted him. He was on my board. I went with the other guys, just afraid of the old Sammy Watkins, the new. Sammy Watkins.
I'll tell you right now. By the time the 3 of us talk again next week, Sammy Watkins could be on the IR.
You're right.
That's true. Very true.
You look at Sammy Watkins, he gets hurt. So I mean, we really can't ever think about that. But if you want to talk about that, what about an up-and-coming superstar now, Dede Westbrook? The Jaguars doesn't have Nick Foles now. Boy, is that guy jinxed or what?
Oh, my God, he can't catch a break.
He didn't break his collarbone before, Joe?
Foles broke it, I believe, when he was with the Eagles.
Eagles, right.
So, yeah.
Don't you think it would hurt a lot more than they act like it does?
I'm sure he's
I've never had
amped
my
up.
collarbone broken. But he walks off the field. He's being interviewed. He don't care. He's happy. Well, also, don't forget, he got his big payday already.
Yes, he did. He's laughing all the way to the bank.
So like the money, but oh my God! But then you look at Dede Westbrook. You look at Leonard Fournette, another paper tiger that now will carry more and get hurt. I mean, you're gonna see big separation. I think between the really superstar teams and the wannabes a lot faster than we're used to. When we get a little bit past the halfway point, you're going to see people maybe 3 or 4 games ahead of the next level.
Wow. It's going to be a wild ride.
The teams out there right now. But I will tell you, I love Josh Allen. I just love him.
Josh Allen, and then I think the biggest surprise, at least for me, of the week, guys, is Darren Waller from Oakland at tight end. And no Antonio Brown. We know who the guy is going to be in Oakland. It's going to be Darren
Was it really
Waller.
a surprise, though? I mean, it was both of our picks last week, though, Joe.
Well, I think his value goes up.
And by the way, I picked him up.
You write it down?
I was shocked he wasn't drafted in our league.
Yeah. Yep.
I went to go at him, and you had him already, Spaceball.
With Brown gone, I mean, his ceiling just got a lot higher, and Tyrell Williams' ceiling got a lot higher.
Oh, Tyrell Williams. Is he a top 5 receiver?
He looked like it last night. I think he's top 20. I'd give him top 20.
Yeah, I think so.
And what about the last thing, and then I'm going to go off, my biggest disappointment is reading before I come on the air today that they ain't going to make me take my watch off.
Oh, my God.
Odell Beckham, my first pick in the draft, they don't want him to wear it. They say it's not in the rule book as you can't wear a watch. And by the way, that's a $300,000 watch.
Yeah, more than most people make in a year.
How about if you made $30,000 a year, it takes you 10 years? I mean, that guy, what's wrong with him? He's as nuts as Brown is.
He's acting like the victim.
He's not going to take it off. Yeah, he said he's not going to take it off. Here they go again. He said it specifically like that, supposedly. And don't forget, he's going to have to go face-to-face with Goodell because he'll be in New York. They play the Jets this week.
That'll be fun. Keep an eye on that.
Not for me. Well, I'm going to go wind my Richard Mill. It's a knockoff. Richard Mill used to watch. It's a knockoff of a $300,000 watch that I bought for $112.
Nice.
Although gave me a raise. Although trade me Josh Jacobs.
There you
Did
go.
he really?
That's all I want.
Huh?
No, he wants him to
Guys,
trade
have a
him.
great one. Now help everybody that's listening. Now shut up and let you two do the genius work.
Well, Spaceball, thanks as always, and then
Thanks,
lots to
Spaceball.
talk
Have
about
a
next
great
week.
one. And next week, if I'm not on, it means Tooch won.
Oh, boy.
We'll see.
It'll hurt.
We'll find out.
Guys, I'll talk to you next week. Have a great one.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
too.
Thanks,
Thanks, Baseball. Spaceball, everybody. Man, oh, man. We got Harp in the chat room says, Fantasy Football Goon has become the Jeff Schwartz show. Well, the first half is dominated by Jeff, and then the second half, Tooch and I break down the numbers and the questions.
Right.
And all the good stuff. So if anyone's got any questions in the chat room, fire them off. But Tooch, we talked a little bit about the matchup-based fantasy play last week and in the draft strategy shows. And man, everybody paid off if you started any Ravens against the Dolphins. Fantasy is all about matchups, my friend. We don't know if the Ravens are that good, but we know the Dolphins are that bad.
Yeah, I said before the season, that was my pick for the worst team in the league. They'll be fighting for the first overall draft pick. And of course, you saw they got trounced, and a bunch of players asked for trades, Joe.
Yeah, it's going to be a total shit show.
It just started. How can you? Come on.
It's a joke.
Yeah, go out and suck it up. I don't even know who the coach is there that replaced Adam Gase.
It's Brian Flores from the New England Patriots.
Okay, gotcha. Right.
So he's a quality coach, but clearly not having much support from his team.
Right, it's a terrible offensive line.
Awful.
Fitzpatrick was running for his life. Fitzpatrick is droppable. I don't know if you're holding on to him. Why?
The whole team is droppable. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I don't recommend starting any Dolphins. So lose all Dolphins.
What do you think, Joe? I was thinking maybe we do a quick little a hit on each game. We do like 8 minutes with Tooch. Give me 30 seconds on each game.
Let's do that real quick before we do that, Tooch. We got
a couple questions, right?
We got one question in the chat room, so let's hit that quickly, and then we'll do that.
All right.
John in the chat room asks, I traded Saquon Barkley for Julio Jones and Sony Michel. What do you think about that?
I don't like that trade, but Julio, if he stays healthy, okay. Sony Michel's volume, his target share, if you will, his snap count shares are down. He doesn't have any value as a pass catcher with Rex Burkhead and James White. Is it a PPR?
It is a PPR.
Okay. So Sony Michel probably has about as much value as he had last year or less, plus his knee. So Saquon Barkley, he got enough volume. He just didn't do as much as he normally does with it, but he still had a pretty good week, and he's still going to be a high producer, Joe.
Yeah, I think if you're really wide receiver needy, then I'm, kind of okay with it. But, giving up Saquon this early in the year is really tough. If he gets hurt next week, you look like a genius. But, both of these guys could get hurt any second, Julio or Saquon. For me, it's a bit of a wash, really. I like Saquon better as fantasy outlook, but by the time all is said and done, both guys could have similar fantasy numbers. So
yeah, and Julio, we thought he was a little banged up in the game against Minnesota, but I think he'll be okay for now. But that foot is always a worry with Julio. I've got one share of Julio in one league, but I don't feel great about him now after this past week. Still, I mean,
tough matchup.
Matt Ryan looked very good though.
Yeah, the Vikings defense looked very good, so got to keep an eye on that. So quick hits with Tooch. So I'm going to give you each game, Tooch, and we'll go.
Yep. All right.
We'll rifle through them quickly. So I'll obviously start with the Bears-Packers.
Right. Like I said last week, Joe, I was worried about David Montgomery's role in this offense with it being a three-headed monster, and he only had 38% of the snaps. And Matt Nagy got off game script and run the ball, so not a good sign for David Montgomery. Allen Robinson, though, had another big game. Like I said, he was the leading receiver.
Over 100 yards.
Exactly. Had 149 air yards, which was higher than his 2018 regular season high. The ball traveled 149. Every target traveled 149 yards through the air. So that's the hit. And Aaron Jones, 59% of the snaps. Jamal Williams, 41%. That's a little concerning. Geronimo Allison was on the field 50% of the plays, but didn't do anything with him. So Marquez Valdez-Scantling looks like the number 2. Now, they doubled and triple teamed Devontae Adams, so don't be worried about Devontae Adams. He's still going to have a good season.
Yep, and I'm just going to pick 8 out of these games, Tooch, and we're not going to hit all of them. I got to go.
Hit me up, Joe.
I got to go for the fantasy gold here. You got Rams-Panthers game.
Right. Christian McCaffrey had a huge game, 13 high-value touches. Huge game. Malcolm Brown looks to be the number 2 running back. I think I called that. 2 touchdowns. He's the goal line back. Darrell Henderson only played 3% of the snaps. Greg Olsen with an injured back. Look out for Ian Thomas to take his place.
Yeah, Ian Thomas got a lot of time last year.
Try to keep it less than 30 seconds, Joe, so you can get through it.
You're good. We already talked about the Falcons game, but let's talk a little bit about the Ravens. They just looked ridiculous.
Oh, put up a 50 burger on
almost 60.
Yeah, almost a 60 burger, right? And Marquise Brown will be a top waiver wire target after he was only played 18% of the snaps.
Nine snaps.
Right, 9 snaps and had 2 touchdowns. So not sure he could do that every week. But other snaps were 68% for Seth Roberts and 65% for Willie Snead. But Mark Andrews,
Ingram?
a big story, didn't play that much, but he really turned it into. He's the receiving tight end, Joe. That's all you need to know.
Yep, we talked about him a lot last year, and we love him this year.
Yep.
Let's touch on quickly the Titans-Browns game, and a very surprising game, Tooch.
Yeah, it was, Joe. Titans and Browns. I mean, I did not expect the Titans to really blow them. It was close, but in the end, it really turned into a blow. But David Njoku, 90% of the snaps, Joe, and a touchdown. That's looking to be a good pickup if you picked him in as a tight end. And Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, 100% of the snaps. Derrick Henry, only 59% of the snaps. Made a lot with them, though. Deion Lewis, 43%. Delaney Walker had a good game, lots of targets, and a touchdown. Tennessee's offense looking a lot better. A.J. Brown, watch out for him. He was a star in the passing game, although only he and Adam Humphries were outsnapped by Corey Davis and T.J. Sharp. But watch out for A.J. Brown. Could be a name you hear in the future, Joe.
No doubt about it. And we got to talk a little bit about that Chargers game. Phillip Rivers looking like he's back to form, Tooch. Right,
and Mike Williams came out of that game injured, so look for Travis Benjamin.
Yeah.
He had 48% of the snaps after Williams went out. Keenan Allen, 83% of the snaps, but the story, of course, is Austin Eckler, 75% of touches. He just had a monster game. Probably a top 10 running back the rest of this season, Joe. I've got 2 or 3 shares of him. So very happy with what I saw from Austin Eckler. Devin Funchess, broken collarbone like Nick Foles. He's on injured reserve.
Yep.
Watch out for Paris Campbell, Joe, who played 29% of the snaps. And Marlon Mack running behind that great Colts offensive line had a big day.
Yeah, he's looking really good, Tooch. And got to Three more we're going to touch on. Then we're going to go to next week's matchups.
Give it to me, Joe.
We got to talk about this Patriots-Steelers game from Sunday night.
Oh, my God.
Absolute bloodbath.
Whew, man. 33-3, Joe. And Stephon Gilmore really put the clamp on Juju Smith-Schuster, who had played 90% of the snaps. But don't be worried, Juju Smith-Schuster. Stephon Gilmore shut down a lot of receivers. So that's just the way it goes. Steelers not ready to play in Foxborough. Dante Moncrief with a bunch of drops looking like the same old Dante Moncrief. I think
Looks
I said
terrible.
James Washington would take that spot from him. James Conner only played 46% of the snaps, but the game script dictated that they pass a lot, although he caught all 4 of his targets. Don't be worried about James Conner. Julian Edelman, 96% of the snaps. Philip Dorsett, 87%. But Antonio Brown's going to cut into whatever Philip Dorsett and Jacoby Myers are getting. Another thing that was surprising me, Joe, was Rex Burkhead almost equal to James White with snaps. So that's a little concerning for James White owners and Sony Michel owners. Sony Michel, I think, only had 20% snaps. They had, gotten ahead, so Sony Michel did not play. They didn't want to risk any injury to him.
Tooch, if there's one thing you can promise yourself, it's that Bill Belichick is always going to change the game plan. So week to week, he's going to have different
What does he hate,
guys.
Joe?
He hates fantasy football,
He hates
Tooch.
fantasy football, Joe. That's why he picked up Antonio Brown.
Denied.
But yes, he
man.
hates fantasy football, but we love it.
Yep.
You want Patriots on your team, just maybe not the running backs. But Tooch, we got 2 more games from yesterday. Really good Monday night games, both of them. So we got to start here with the Saints-Texans game. Wow, what a game that was.
Yeah, one of the best games I've seen in a long time. Saints 30, Texans 28. Joe, the Texans looked a lot better than I thought they would. I didn't think they would play good at all. In fact, I was losing to you, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to catch you with just Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, and you had Josh Jacobs. But Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins, 216 air yards.
Yeah.
The ball on all of his targets. He had like 3 or 4 drops in the first half, but then he settled down and just tore it up. Deshaun Watson, very calm. Even though he's running a little bit, he's just a good quarterback, Joe. I'm worried about his back, though. That's the thing. You saw him get up a couple times.
Yeah.
Looked like he was hurting. That's concerning. If you're a Deshaun Watson owner, I'd try and pick somebody up that's, on the waiver wire or there's guys you could trade now, Joe, that values are high. So,
yeah. He didn't deserve to lose that game, that's for sure.
No, he sure played a good game, both them. And Carlos Hyde, looking rejuvenated, averaged 8.3 yards per carry against the Saints, who had a pretty good run defense, number 2 in the NFL last year. That was surprising, Joe. So Carlos Hyde, probably a top waiver wire pickup this week. Although I wouldn't be worried about Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson got the bulk of the targets and the high-value plays. So Duke Johnson, I think he'll still be okay.
You can't go wrong there, Tooch. And last but not least, another surprising game. The Oakland Raiders beating the Denver Broncos in an action-packed game.
Yes. That was a good game, too. And Josh Jacobs, boy, he played a lot of snaps, Joe. Got everything of value. Jalen Richard barely played. But Darren Waller, our pick to click last week, Joe, 100% of the snaps.
Wow.
Just incredible. Tyrell Williams, who's got a big boost now that Antonio Brown's going. He played 95% of the snaps. And Ryan Grant was the next leading wide receiver, played 71% of the snaps. So Ryan Grant looks to be the number 2 now in Oakland. Now on the Broncos side, Cortland Sutton, 89% of the snaps, and he looked to be Joe Flacco's favorite target. Emmanuel Sanders also looking good. Deshaun Hamilton, droppable. But Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman split time almost equally, Joe.
Yeah,
That's
they did.
A little concerning. They even brought in Devontae Booker on 3rd down. So the Broncos running game hasn't settled on a guy to be a bell cow. I think you're upset if you're a Philip Lindsay owner.
Yeah.
Just not enough playing time for my like, Joe, for Philip Lindsay. But we'll see. If you're invested in Royce Freeman, the arrow's pointing up.
It's going to be a long season, so lots to talk about. Those is Tooch's quick hits right there, and we're running towards the tail end of the show, guys. But we are going to walk through some of the great matchups in Week 2. The week starts off Thursday night, Tooch. You got the Panthers. The Buccaneers at the Panthers. So obviously Christian McCaffrey going to be a top-tier start against that Buccaneers defense. I mean, look for him to continue steamrolling. And maybe O.J. Howard finally gets it going, Tooch.
Well, we hope so. Jameis Winston did not have a good game, but you got to think Coach Bruce Arians is going to have the team looking a little bit better. We mentioned Greg Olsen has the back injury. So I don't know if you want to start. If you have Greg Olsen, you're relying on him as a starter, you're probably going to want to look elsewhere. Now, Christian McCaffrey, of course, a must start. The guy who led the backfield best of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 3 running backs was Ronald Jones. So if you invested in Ronald Jones, you have to be happy with where the arrow is pointing for that one. Now, Cameron Brate, it was a weird game against the 49ers, Joe. Cameron Brate had 2 touchdowns called back. So did George Kittle. So,
yeah, it was weird.
In all, it was four tight end touchdowns called back. So it was kind of a weird game. San Francisco couldn't get anything going with Jimmy Garoppolo either, and Tevin Coleman a high ankle sprain. So if you drafted Matt Breida like I did in one league, I'm not sure how many shares of him I have, but you got to be liking Matt Breida. Matt Breida value took a big jump, Joe.
Yep, and we talked about it last week. And we have to talk about Lamar Jackson again. I mean, the Ravens they're playing home against the Arizona Cardinals. You got a great matchup there. Look for more of the same with Lamar Jackson and crew, Mark Ingram, Hollywood Brown. I mean, these are guys that have great matchups, and they're approaching must-start territory right now, Tooch.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the air raid offense, Joe, but they ran 89 plays. Of course, that includes overtime. So in 5 quarters, but they said they wanted to run 80 plays a game, and then 570 air yards for Kyler Murray, although he only completed 238 yards. But you got to like the way it's looking. In the first half, Kyler Murray only had 70 yards. He settled down and then started to do some damage. Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk got a lot of targets, didn't do as much as he could have with him. So if you have Christian Kirk, that arrow is pointing up. Larry Fitzgerald looking really good with Kyler Murray.
Yes, he is.
30 fantasy points for Fitzgerald. I've got a couple shares of him as well. The old guy is doing some damage, Joe. Him, Deshaun Jackson, Sammy Watkins. Not bad, huh, Joe, for the veteran wide receivers?
A lot of those guys are must-adds. Mike Wallace looking great. The whole Cowboys team looking great. Young buck Michael Gallup looking fantastic. Did I not mention him too, Joe?
You
did. We talked about last week. They had a great matchup this week against the Redskins. Fire up all the Cowboys you can because I think it's going to be great. Darius Geis hurt. Looks like probably Adrian Peterson will get the start. So
Chris Thompson got the game script dictated that he come on and run and catch. So Chris Thompson probably a waiver wire target in deeper leagues, trying to get some PPR running back value there, Joe. I think that's a good pickup.
For sure, and when I keep scrolling through looking at fantasy matchups, I'm just finger picking the good ones here. Yeah. You got the Lions are at home and they get to face the Chargers this week. Right. I love the Chargers against the Lions. I think it's going to be feast and famine. Of course, the Chargers will be feasting. The Lions might have tough sledding, but they are at home. But I love Phillip Rivers again, and of course Austin Eckler. Fantastic matchup here. You got to roll with those guys. Keenan Allen. I mean, Hunter Henry, I think, is going to have a big week against the Lions.
Yep.
So fire all those guys up.
Yeah, Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry dominating the target share for the Chargers. But watch out for Travis Benjamin as he's going to come in and take over for the injured Mike Williams for a little bit. Also, Matt Stafford, 3 touchdowns, 385 yards. Not a bad day for Pat Stafford.
That's exactly what he did.
He padded his stats, Joe.
He sure did.
But Kerryon Johnson, if you invested in Kerryon Johnson, you can't like the way it was looking. He wasn't getting any high-value targets, and he was not getting targeted in the passing game, Joe. He's a good receiver, just kind of disappointing with Kerryon Johnson.
Well, it's a rough start for him, but you got to hope he bounces back. So keep an eye on that.
This is the most important week, Joe, wouldn't you say, for waiver wire pickups week 1? Everybody's scrambling to get guys that they overlooked in the draft. This is a very important week, strategy-wise, Joe.
Strategy-wise, to get who you want, and it's also important, Tooch, don't give up on anybody too soon.
Right. That's a lesson you and I learn every year, Joe.
We learned it last year with Calvin Ridley, and I stress it again this year. Do not pull the trigger too soon.
Latavius Murray was another one we learned the lesson with. Chris Carson. Yep,
and another week of great matchups coming up here. You got the Green Bay Packers at home got to play the Minnesota Vikings in an important NFC North matchup.
Joe,
of course,
Dalvin Cook is still running, I think, right? Is he
Dalvin Cook is ridiculous.
Has anybody tackled him yet?
Probably not, especially if it's Green Bay's run defense. But I really think the guy to watch in this game is Adam Thielen, working out of that slot, probably against this Green Bay secondary. Just look what Allen Robinson did last week. I think you can expect more of the same for Adam Thielen this week.
Yeah, I agree. Stephon Diggs a little banged up, though, Joe. As usual. Kid can't stay healthy. But Dalvin Cook and even his backup looked good. Alexander Madison got a lot of play time, and he did some stuff with it. But that's a good run game they've got, Joe. They really improved the offensive line. Kirk Cousins only 10 pass attempts. That's one of the lowest all-time passing attempt games.
They didn't really need it, so they did what they had to do to win. So I can't argue with the game plan, but they're going to have to pass more against Green Bay, that's for sure. But next killer fantasy matchup, Tooch. Obviously, we mentioned it earlier. The Patriots going down to Miami. I think you're going to play any Patriot that you can. It's going to be ridiculous. So get them all fired up because it's going to be a bloodbath.
I wonder, Joe, I got a question for you about this game. We know that some of the players requested trades after the game. How hard are they going to be playing this game if it gets away from them, Joe? Are you going to see some loafing?
Well, I mean, you got to want to get
not running to get hurt.
You're going to have guys that are going to want to get traded, so maybe it's the other way around, Tooch. Maybe guys want to perform well so they can get traded. So
but if the game gets out of hand, they don't want to get injured either.
Yeah, it's true.
That's hurt their value next year. A torn ACL or.
Yeah, no, it's very, very possible. And Tooch, here's a game last week that we didn't think was going to be much of anything, but Sunday afternoon you got the Chiefs at the Raiders in what could be fantasy gold game of the week, based off of what we saw last week from both teams. Obviously, you got Mahomes and then Derek Carr, Darren Waller. I mean, that could be multiple points of fantasy right there. So I'm firing all those guys up.
Yeah, I like the looks of that one, Joe. And LaShawn McCoy even got some touches in that game for the Chiefs, almost as much as Damian Williams.
They
Williams
both look good.
Do a little bit about if Williams were to go down, the Chiefs are in good shape with Shady McCoy.
They sure are. And, of course, Josh Jacobs was ridiculous last night. I think that matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, I expect him to go well over 100 yards in that game.
Yep. Should exceed his draft value.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that went so late in drafts. I saw him go anywhere from the third to the tail end of the fourth. And
Tyrell Williams probably a big waiver target too, Joe, would you say?
Yeah, he's available in the majority of leagues.
Yeah.
So go target him. He's
a number one receiver on an NFL team.
He's a must start for me now at this point forward.
Yep.
I mean, like you said, he's a number one, and he gets open, he's speedy, he's fast, and he's good.
And he's big.
He's a big boy. And there's a lot of big boys on the Saints. They got to go down to play the Rams next week. That's another fantasy game of the week. Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara, Drew Brees, Jared Goff, this wide receiver core, Michael Thomas. These are all guys that are must-starts in this game. And, of course, the later games always seem to be, I don't know why, it feels like Sunday games on the West Coast are always score fests. So, the trend is going up.
The Rams went to Carolina. They had to travel a long distance. They didn't play their best game. I expect them to play a little bit better here. I love the matchup against the Saints with the three Rams wide receivers. Now the Saints, man, Michael Thomas, he just catches everything, Joe.
Yeah, he does.
Really love that kid. I'm a little worried about Jared Cook. He was looking good in the first half, then kind of disappeared. We'll have to see. We'll see. The target shares were dominated by Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. So the offense is obviously going between those two, but I'd like to see the tight end get a little bit more involved. We'll see. We'll see. A little bit arrow pointing down after this game for Jared Cook, but hopefully he'll turn it around if you have shares of Jared Cook.
Latavius Murray looking good
also
too.
Look good too. He's always good, Joe. Anything happens to Kamara, whew.
I have them both. I have them handcuffed in one of my leagues.
Yep.
So it's a really smart thing if you want to trade for him. It doesn't hurt, especially if Kamara goes down. Of course, we got to talk about Tooch, the Bears going down to play the Broncos, and what's probably going to be more of a defensive game. But that Broncos defense didn't look so good yesterday.
Right, but the coach knows the Bears. He knows what their tendencies are. Now, Mitch Trubisky, he took a lot of heat for what was a terrible performance by the offensive line. If you watch the tape, never lies. It came out today. You'll find out that Mitch Trubisky didn't play as bad as everyone thought and doesn't deserve the blame. The coaching calls were terrible. The offensive line, terrible effort, blocking, terrible communication. Repetitions in the preseason do matter, in my opinion, Joe. You have to play in the preseason. That's 2 years in a row that we've lost the opening game after playing a half-hearted preseason. I don't like the fact that it's costing us a game by not playing. You saw Mahomes out there in the preseason slinging it around.
Tom Brady was out there.
Tom Brady out there slinging it around. They both put up over 30 points in the first game. There's no reason why. It doesn't matter. You can't be worried about having an injury because that could happen at any time. You have to get the wins. Now the Bears are in the cellar. We'll see if they can turn it around against the Broncos. I don't know if I like the matchup on the road, but Denver doesn't have that great of an offense. I think it'll be a close game, Joe. Hopefully the Bears pull it out coming down to a last-minute field goal.
Yeah, I will tell you one thing, Tooch. Allen Robinson is a must-start this point forward.
Yes.
I mean, the guy's a target machine. Harp in the chat room agrees with me. A-Rob is definitely the guy you want to start. He's a high-end wide receiver 3, a low-end wide receiver 2, with the upside to potentially head into that 1 territory.
I think he's a solid wide receiver too, man. He got 14 targets. I'm
just saying this week specifically against the Broncos.
But sure, okay. Yeah, he's if you drafted him, and you got to be pretty happy with what you're seeing. I don't think it's going to be that far from what they're going to be having in this season. I think you're going to see more games like that from Allen Robinson than he had last year.
No doubt, man. And we got to talk about our Sunday night game coming up, Tooch. You got the Eagles going down to play the Falcons in Atlanta, and of course the Carson Wentz and the Eagles got hot on Sunday. They get a great matchup against the Falcons defense that really couldn't stop anything that the Vikings were doing. So I'm loving it right now. I'm loving the Eagles.
D-Jax, Joe.
D-Jax.
He was on my bench. 40 points on my bench.
It's a lot of points. Zach Ertz, I think, rebounds in a big way. This could be a Jordan Howard game here, too.
Here's the thing, Joe. Both teams are supposed to have improved defenses. Week 1 did not look like they had good defenses.
No.
But there's still time. It's early. Let's see. I think that this game will be fairly high scoring. 45
I think so.
For upwards of 45 points or more. So I don't think it'll be as much of a defensive game as it's purported to be. I expect there'll be some good scoring in this one.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You can't get around it there. It's going to be a great weekend for fantasy points. And that takes us to our last game, Tooch. It takes us to Monday Night Football. You got the Browns going down to play the Jets in New York in a great matchup, actually. I think that's going to be a fun game. Le'Veon Bell looked good last week.
Yeah.
The Browns did not. But I think this is going to be a slugfest. I think it's going to be an exciting Monday night game. And I really, really hope that the Browns offense comes back to life.
Yeah, the Tennessee defense played a good defensive game against the Browns. I think they'll bounce back this week. The Jets, not that good of a team. I think there should be some good scoring in this. I don't think either of them are defensive juggernauts. I think this will be about as much scoring as Philadelphia game, Joe. I think you can confidently start some of your starters in this game, Joe.
Yeah, I have no problem starting any of the Browns here. I think Nick Chubb has a great game. Odell has a big bounce back. I think Landry does well.
And Jamison Crowder, 14 targets, caught 11 of them. Joe, he's filling that.
Quincy Enunwa.
Jamison Crowder filling that slot wide receiver role in the Jets. Adam Gase likes to run plays for. So.
And they just traded for Demaryius Thomas today as well.
Right. So you got Demaryius Thomas, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, Quincy Enunwa. Not a bad little receiving core for Sam Darnold. And Le'Veon Bell, who dominated most of the targets. Crowder and Bell, the highest targeted Jets in that one. So we'll see I think it'll be a high-scoring game, Joe. Lots of offensive power in this one.
I think so too, brother. I'm looking forward to another fantastic week of fantasy. Man, oh man, my rankings will be up on fantasyfootballgoon.com at some point before the kickoff on Thursday, so keep your eyes peeled. I'll tweet it out from @FFBGoon.
Let's give them some top waiver targets, Joe.
Yeah, we'll close things out with
any
some
top ones for you.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. At least Darren Waller, if he's not owned in your league, the tight end for the Oakland Raiders, he's going to be a top 5 tight end the rest of the way as long as he stays healthy.
Right.
You want every piece of Darren Waller, and Tooch touched on him a little bit earlier, but Carlos Hyde, you got to get a piece of Carlos Hyde.
He looks like really good.
He looks refreshed. He looks like Lamar Miller 2.0. So
a couple wide receivers out there too. John Ross for the Bengals had a monster game. Now, John Ross last year got knocked, for having the drops, but he only had 50% of the balls thrown to him were catchable. So take that into consideration. He was also injured last year. This year, his speed is apparent and will be a top waiver pickup along with Tyrell Williams, Mecole Hardman, John Brown, who had a big day for the Bills, but and Marquise Hollywood Brown, Joe, along with Sammy Watkins as well. Hollywood Brown, although the Ravens only threw the ball 25 times, and the Bills even less. So temper your expectations for John Brown and Marquise Brown.
And Tooch, I got one more waiver wire which is a guy we talked about at the beginning of the show. I know a lot of people dropped him prematurely, so if he's available, you're going all in, especially if you're in an auction bid league, and I'm talking about Antonio Brown. I got a text today from one of my friends that's in one of my leagues, and he's in an auction league with free agent bidding, and somebody dropped Antonio Brown. He's like, how much am I putting down on him?
Yeah.
Obviously the story at the start of the show with the rape allegations, sexual assault allegations, might have an effect on there, but I'm still putting a lot of money down because if he's got Tom Brady, it's pretty much a given that he's going to be a top 5 receiver as long as he keeps his head out of his ass.
Yeah, I don't know how much I'd bid, Joe. The ceiling is high, but the floor is low. That sounds like a song, huh, Joe? The ceiling is high, the floor is low.
That's right. The ceiling is high and the floor is low. It's going to be a fun week. Huge thank you to Jeff Schwartz for swinging by the show to be at the first half. Always love having Spaceball on the show. Absolute joy to have. Tooch, we covered a lot today, man. There's a lot of great matchups in week 2. Week 1 of fantasy football is come and gone. I'm on such a high right now. I can't really wait for Thursday. It feels so far, but it's so close.
Oh, man. And don't forget, Shy fans in the stands coming up next with Joe Mandel and Greg Braggs and their guests, Corey Wooten, ex-Bear.
Yes, that's coming up next. It's going to be fun. Don't forget, on tomorrow night, you have a live 100 proof. That's going to be a good. That's going to be a good one. You're not going to want to miss that. It's going to be fun. Nice. get amped up. Phil broke down Mitch playing in The Tape Never Lies on YouTube. Right. So go check out that. It's great. And then jump in the chat room tomorrow night during 100 Proof and join that conversation. So make sure you check out 100 Proof live on Wednesday. And, of course, it's so many great shows on the Bears Barroom Radio Network. You can't name them all. There's just so many. But what you're going to do is you're going to subscribe to that Bears Barroom podcast stream. And then they're going to push automatically to your phone, so you'll have all the content your heart desires.
You'll get it all.
You'll get it all, and there's a knock at Tooch's door, but that's all right. We're wrapping the show anyway. Thanks to everybody who tuned in, and we're going to end the show the same way we always end the show, and that's God bless America, God bless football, and let's kick some ass.
So long, farewell. I'll be just saying goodnight. I hate to go and leave this pretty sight.